Hello there. If there's anything that shows us all just how badly the UK educational system has failed our kids, it's this. This should worry us immensely. Children are our future and must not be subjected to woke indoctrination. Apart from stripping swathes of free speech from the online community, well, part of it anyway, one element of the fallout from these recent riots will be more thought training in our schools. Yes, according to the government, our children will now be taught how to think critically. My question is, what have they been teaching them up to this point then? And I think we all know the answer to that. They've been instructing them on what to think, not how to think. But somehow, in a Damascene moment, the government wants to scrap all that and get children to be critical of all they hear. And boy, have they got a lot to be critical about. Especially the white working class boys, who everyone seems to agree have been left behind by the system. I would just point out there that according to TES magazine at tes.com, in England, data from the Department for Education published in June 2023 shows there are 468,371 teachers, of which 83%, 388,929, are female. 83% are female. As far as I'm concerned, this shows a total lack of critical thinking about how important the male role model is in the classroom. And that position is mirrored across the UK. In fact, according to a BBC report from June 2022, but according to the department, there are no male nursery school teachers anywhere in Northern Ireland. Now, TED.com appears to be an authoritative source, and we all know the BBC can always be trusted. So I hope I'm not spreading disinformation here. So where are the calls for more male teachers in the UK? Where is the DEI Brigade on that one? Or does DEI only work one way? Oh, what a silly question that is. We all know the answer to that. And the reason this new critical thinking thing has cropped up is because of the number of younger people, some under the age of 18, who have been swept up in some of this rioting. Rioting on what the woke establishment believes is the wrong side of the issue. There is also the evidence that Generation Z is moving to the right of politics, and we can't let that spread to the next generation, can we? Now, the aim of this new critical thinking push seems to be aimed at getting children to look at online sources of information and watch out for the misinformation and disinformation warning signs. And of course, the easy answer will always be, is it on the BBC or the Guardian website? Has BBC Verify okayed it? If not, be critical of it, and it would be best to ignore it. You know the drill. So let's put this new critical thinking thing to the test. I'll put a few topics in front of you and ask you if you think children will be taught to critically evaluate them, or are they to be brainwashed into believing them without question? 1. Diversity is our strength. 2. Christianity is bad. 3. Britain has always been inhabited by millions of non-white people. 4. Open borders is always good. 5. Net zero carbon. 6. Critical race theory. 7. Stonewall activity in schools and the public sector. 8. Labour election manifestos. 9. Safe and effective. 10. Two-tier policing does not exist. 11. Two-tier courts do not exist. 12. Two-tier society does not exist. 13. Labour government policy. 14. Government statistics. 15. Family life is not important. 16. Keeping the school curriculum away from parents is very important. 17. There are an infinite number of genders. 18. Multiculturalism always works. That's a depressingly long list of what we're currently confronted with, isn't it? And there will be many, many more. And if the answer to my question is that all of the above must be accepted without question in the classroom, then no amount of this new critical thinking push by government will help us. In fact, it will just be shown up to be a sham. In fact, debate amongst adults on these matters has been suppressed, so what chance the school classroom? And there is news that the government wants to bring back the concept of banning anything that, although it is completely legal, it is deemed hurtful. And just think about how much mis and disinformation is already fed through pupils by the educational system. Now, if you really wanted to get this educational arc back onto a proper critical thinking course, then get someone like Dr. David Starkey in to do the job. He'd get some true UK history and constitutional thought back into the education system for a start. He'd make an education worthy of the name. And then we have to keep the government and the current mainstream media as far away from education as we can. Looking at the last few years of the health emergency, net zero and the BLM riots, you just know neither of them can be trusted to give us the unvarnished truth. All they end up doing is trying to polish some brown stuff and then serve it up to us. And there'll be a lot of that happening once they get to further tinker with our children's brains with this new initiative. At the moment, all misinformation and disinformation is equal, but some of it is more equal than others. It all depends upon the source. Mis and disinformation from government and mainstream media, especially the BBC, is currently always classed as information to be believed and acted upon. And proper information, however truthful, derived from citizen journalists, will always be deemed as hurtful mis or disinformation, unless it conforms to the establishment line, i.e., however truthful or not, the government line must be accepted as proper information. See George Orwell's 1984 Instruction Manual for Governments, Warning of Government Overreach. Now, according to the experts, there has been an increase in mental health problems amongst the young. In fact, the Children's Society says 1 in 6 children aged 5 to 16 are likely to have a mental health problem. 1 in 6. Now, many will say this is a lockdown phenomenon. However, I'm not convinced. I worry that the psychological gymnastics that all things woke has imposed on our schools in recent years might be an even bigger contributor. In fact, if we wanted to do some critical thinking about it, we would need to have an independent study into it. But that will never happen. The correct people would run any such study, and the cause would always be laid at the door of institutional racism, and we all know it. At the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, this new critical thinking policy for schools will just end up being the same old dangerous left-wing march through the institution's guff.